Hey everyone, recently Xiaomi announced the Pocophone F1 and collectively blew our minds with the value that it offers. A Snapdragon 845 chipset, a 4000 mAh battery, and more, all for around $300. In all honesty, this phone is really difficult to evaluate just because what it offers pushes it into a category way above its price point. So the question that I asked today is, why buy a flagship when this phone exists? And what corners have been cut by Xiaomi to get it to this price point? I'm Angie for GSM Arena, and this is our Pocophone F1 review. The Pocophone is well made and entirely constructed out of high-quality polycarbonate. In other words, plastic. The exception is the Armored Edition, which is a little more special with its Kevlar-covered back. Another quirk of the phone is a notification LED on the bottom bezel. The F1 is a little too wide, so it's definitely a two-handed device. That said, it's not slippery, and I'm not afraid that it will shatter if I drop it. I actually can't remember the last time that I've said this about a phone, so huge points to Xiaomi here. The F1 also seems to be splash-proof, though it doesn't have an IP rating. On the back, there's a lightning-fast fingerprint reader. It has a raised edge around it so you can quickly find it, but it's a little too high up to be entirely comfortable. Thankfully, there's a face unlock option that's as fast as the fingerprint reader and more secure than most Android phones. Why? It uses IR as part of its authentication. The infrared tech also guarantees that the phone's face unlock will work in the dark. Where you can really tell that costs have been cut is with looks. It just isn't the prettiest phone around, and if we're gonna compare flagship killers, the OnePlus 6 is a much more elegant device. On the Poco, the bezels are a little too thick and the chin is far from what you call subtle. The Kevlar back attracts fingerprints like crazy too. And if we're gonna talk about literal cut corners, whatever happened to square edges on screens? But let's be real, you're not gonna buy a phone just because it sparkles on your desk. The nearly 6.2-inch IPS LCD panel has a 1080p resolution and a good pixel density. While the display isn't an AMOLED, it had excellent contrast, and colors were accurate when switched to standard contrast mode. The notch is far from anybody's favorite feature, but it's easy to hide. If I had to nitpick, the biggest gripe with the screen had nothing to do with the display's quality. Rather, the automatic brightness doesn't adapt to changing light conditions very well, and I kept having to adjust it manually. Thanks to its 4000 mAh battery, the Pocophone received a 94-hour endurance rating on our battery life tests. The device also supports Quick Charge 3.0, so running out of juice should not be a problem. The F1 features stereo speakers and received an excellent rating in our loudness tests. Audio quality was pretty good too, though trebles are a bit muffled. Sound through headphones wasn't quite as good, and if you have high impedance headphones, you might struggle to achieve high volume levels. Still, I have to hand it to Xiaomi for keeping the headphone jack. That's one less dongle to worry about, and it allows for the inclusion of an FM radio on the device. The F1 has a Snapdragon 845 and either 6 or 8 gigs of RAM. Performance is unsurprisingly flagship level. However, if you're particularly power hungry, you might want to disable MIUI's heavy-handed battery saver, which turns off apps in the background. The Poco also includes a minimum of 64GB of storage and a microSD card slot. The Pocophone features Android Oreo 8.1 with a special Poco version of MIUI 9.6 on top. It should be updated to Android Pie within 3 months, and MIUI 10 before that. Xiaomi has already released a few updates, and it seems to be releasing new software at a faster pace than previous years, so hopefully they'll actually stick to the schedule. The Poco launcher is closer to stock Android than other MIUI-powered phones. It has shortened UI animations that make the phone feel snappier, and you can add icon packs without needing to install a new launcher. There's a shelf on the left side that is reminiscent of OnePlus's launcher. A few shortcuts on it are quite useful, like the one for Google Assistant. If you get rid of the navigation bar and use swipe gestures, the always available shortcut for Google Assistant on the home button disappears, and the shelf is a place you can usually find it. MIUI doesn't usually come with an app drawer, so it's surprising to see it on this launcher. It has a few pre-made folders that automatically sort apps into different categories. They aren't always the most accurate, and you don't get to choose which app goes where. But if you don't like them, categories are easy to disable. More conveniently, the app search bar is at the bottom, and reaching it doesn't require a stretch. Most of the pre-included apps are quite useful, but I find the pre-included video app frustrating and distracting. You can access local videos, but it also includes videos and ads from YouTube in India. So whether you're into tech, or old French films, or tutorials in whistling, you're gonna get ads for Dolce & Gabbana and whatever is trending. The Pocophone packs a dual camera setup. There's a main 12-megapixel shooter with an f1.9 aperture and a 5-megapixel secondary camera for better depth sensing. For the price range, photos are excellent. In daylight, they're sharp and detailed with almost no noise and great contrast. Even more impressive are the accurate and lively colors. The dynamic range is good enough that auto HDR rarely gets triggered, and when it does, you get a little extra detail in the shadows. In daylight, it's actually a close call as to whether photos from the OnePlus 6 or photos from the Pocophone are better. In low light, shots aren't quite as impressive. Normal photos are sharp, though noisy, while those with auto HDR are smooth to the point where some finer details are smeared. The f1.9 aperture allows for brighter shots, but some images were still a little blurrier than what we'd like because the phone lacks OIS. In portrait mode, edge detection was pretty accurate in well-lit environments and with backgrounds that aren't too busy. The Poco can only record 4K videos at 30 frames per second, and sadly, they lack stabilization. Despite that, they were sharp, had good contrast, and had nice colors. Dynamic range was just as good as what we found in photos. Full HD videos, on the other hand, were super smooth, though they didn't have quite as much detail. The F1 has a 20-megapixel front camera with an f2.0 aperture. Photos were stunningly detailed and offered good colors. Selfie portraits had a background blur that was comparable to that of the main camera. So here's the deal. This phone is not perfect. There are competitors out there which have better screens, better cameras, NFC, and that look prettier. However, there is nothing that is a better value. Even the OnePlus 6, its closest competitor, is more than 50% more expensive. And if we ignore price for a moment, even though that's really hard, this phone covers all the basics of a good smartphone, all those important pillars, and it covers them well. So if you're in the market for a phone right now and you don't have a lot of money, it's really hard to recommend anything else. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button down below and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get our latest tech reviews as soon as they're out. See you next time.